Also joining us today, we are extremely honored and blessed to introduce to you guys a man of many talents, previously the co-founder of Kana Software, an enterprise software firm, a professor at Stanford University, and most recently, the founder of the world's most famous social fitness app. We would like to welcome to the stage the CEO and co-founder of Strava, Michael Horvath.
All right, HackSC, thank you. Hello, I'm Michael Horvath. I am the co-founder and CEO of Strava. You may not know what Strava is, so I will start by just describing it. It is a community around the world of people who like to be active, any kind of activity. And when you put your activity into Strava, you get kudos, Strava kudos, which is someone giving you a high five, and it feels really good. And then you go out and do it again, and then you give them kudos. That's the way it works. It's a community of people who are really excited about movement. So it's free to download and use. It's a subscription-based service, but you can use it for free as long as you like. And we welcome all people to download the app. In fact, right now, you can probably download it right now if you don't have it. So if you do know Strava, you probably know what I've been talking about, what a kudo is, and you might have some friends who also use Strava, but it's now grown to a community around the world of over 100 million people who wake up every day and put a little movement into their lives. And it didn't start that way. So I'm going to tell you the story of where this came from and kind of like where it is today and maybe a little bit about where it's going. And I don't think it's just Strava's story. I think this is important for anyone who's thinking about the future of how we live our lives. It's going to be there's going to be something around the digital experience that brings your real world life to life. And Strava is just one of many that's like this. But what's interesting about Strava, and I think a lot of other companies and experiences like this, is that it's built around connection with other people. Community is what makes Strava special. It's our superpower. There are lots of different ways to track a workout. You can complete your rings on your Apple Watch or your Fitbit. You don't have to have a community of people you're connected to, but that's what makes Strava special, and that makes all the difference. So let's start with where did this come from? And I'm going to take you all the way back to last century, and I'm talking about the 1986. And I am an undergrad. I don't think all of you are undergrads, but many of you are undergrads. I am at Harvard University, and I am a junior. And I'm on the crew team. I joined the crew team. I'd never rowed before, but it doesn't really matter what sport or where. But I meet this guy named Mark, and he's also just joined the crew team because he's a freshman. And we become friends, and we train together for 2 years, and then I graduate, and then he graduates. And we had this great experience being on this team together. And then fast forward to 1994, and I got a PhD in economics, and I'm teaching at Stanford. And there's Mark, he's living in Palo Alto. And there's this thing called the internet that's brand new. We didn't know what it was. And he'd come to my office at Stanford from his office in Palo Alto, and we'd sit there and talk about what is the internet going to do in our lives. And I think he came to my office because I actually had an internet connection, and he didn't in his. That's the way it worked back then. And we thought to ourselves, the thing that we missed the most is actually the team, the people who we showed up to at the boathouse every day, and we just had a lot of fun. We trained hard. It just meant a lot to our daily lives. And we missed that team. And so we said, could we create the team with the internet? Could we create the virtual locker room? And we went out and talked. Back then, there were no apps and there were no smartphones. It was websites. And no one knew how to build a website. You had to go to somebody who knew how, and they charged you, some money. And I know today you can pretty quickly whip up a website with tools that are easily available. But back then, it was just, this is all new, right? And the people who were, the companies that we wanted to talk to is about building a website that would give us this virtual locker room. They said, let me get this straight. You want people who don't know each other to share personal information with each other on the internet. That's never going to happen. People aren't going to just share stuff about where they are or what they're doing or maybe a photo with complete strangers. It just won't happen. So they said that's a really bad idea. And that's what led to starting this other company called Kana Software that had nothing to do with working out or community or anything. And it was really boring. I'm not going to talk about it. But fast forward after Kana, and Kana was a pretty big success for a time, and then it wasn't. But we took it public in 1999. We learned how to start a company through Kana. I learned how to ruin my academic career through Kana, and I eventually stopped being an economist. But fast forward to about 2008, and we start talking about, well, if we were going to start another company, what would we do? And we said, remember that idea about the virtual locker room? Well, we still have the problem that we don't have connection to people around being active, and we miss that. And so we looked around and we said, the world has now changed. In our pockets is this thing that can actually not only track a workout, because it has GPS in it, it can also connect us to a community, because there are about 100 apps in the App Store by 2008. 100. Today, I had millions of apps in the App Store. But there are about 100 apps in the App Store, and some of them are actually workout apps where you track a workout. But we're going to make it different. We're going to make it about community, because that's what mattered to us. And so now the world is different. People think it's a good idea. We start this company. And we just never knew how it was going to, exactly what was going to happen. We said it doesn't have to be big. It just has to be great. It has to be something you want to wake up every day and see what your friends are doing, and see, you can contribute your workouts and connect around that with other people. And when you put it out in the world, you'll see what happens, because that's what your customer will tell you. They'll tell you whether they like it. So from 2009, when we got a team together around this, until 2019, we grew from just the two of us using this app, once we built it, to about 50 million people around the world. And we thought, this is a pretty good business. We were growing by word of mouth. One friend telling their friends about the app, and it grew to about 50 million people. And the interesting thing was, most of these people are not in the United States. It's not like this has anything to do with where you're located. It's spread around the world without us trying. We weren't trying to be global. We just were. It's kind of universal. Where people are active, it's everywhere. And then in 2020, the pandemic changed everyone's lives. But it changed in a very specific way. People found themselves with a lot more time and a lot less connection in real life. And so what they were looking for was, how do I connect with other people around something that matters to me? And there was this app called Strava. And in a matter of 2 years, so it took us about 10 years to get to 50 million people around the world. In 2 years, we get to 100 million. And that's the power of community, right? That if something's helping you live a better life, getting past this really tough part of your life with the pandemic that changed everything, you reach out to other people, you connect with them, and it helps. So we grew a lot during the pandemic, and people found their way to Strava, and they found what it can do for them, and it helped them get through that moment, and many of them stayed, and they're active, and we continue to grow. And we want that to be what we're known for. We want to be the service that motivates the world to move, that helps everyone be healthier and fitter, that's all types of movement. There's over 50 different sport types. We started with cycling, but we moved to just everything you can do. We just added pickleball. I don't know if anyone's into pickleball, but it seems to be sweeping the world. So community, it's not just about you and who you're connected to. It's also a way to solve really, really tough problems. In 2015, we thought to ourselves, well, we have all this data about how people are moving, because that's that you get a GPS track when you upload the activity. And we said, what else could we be doing to help solve some of the world's problems. And we thought about movement in cities is really an interesting challenge. Where do we put the bike lanes? How do you design safe intersections? How do you use where are people active in parks, and how much do they use them? And over the course of a couple of years, we developed a service called Strava Metro, which is the world's largest database of human-powered movement, turned into a tool for city planners to figure out things like infrastructure investments. That wouldn't be possible if you didn't have the desire for people to upload the data, because it's fun and interesting to use. That's Strava. But then you can turn that data into this anonymized, aggregated source of information to solve a problem for a city or a country or the world, to help reduce congestion, help reduce pollution, get more people outside, break down the social injustice of hundreds of years of investment into areas of the representation and not into the areas of the unrepresentation. So Strava Metro is a community solution to a big world problem, a set of big world problems. Public health may be the next frontiers. How do you look at where people live and how healthy they are through the lens of how much do they move and what do they do when they move? So as I'm thinking about what this event is all about, which is how, throughout the world, in the global context, what are the ways in which communities of people, 2 or 3 people, 20 or 30 people, 2 to 3 million people can solve problems together? What are the ways in which you can connect them, inspire them, motivate them perhaps, share the information, tap into the collective intelligence of that group in order to find the solution to what you need, whether that's move more, whether that's reduce pollution, whether that's distribute resources better to solve whatever problem you're trying to solve. And I think that's the future of Strava too. If I'm thinking ahead to what we're doing next, where it's going, and what we hope is that we can build out even more of that sense of community into helping to connect you, and so that Strava can be the place where you can answer questions that you may have, like where's the best place to go to find a yoga class near the campus, or I've got a pain in my Achilles tendon and I'm supposed to run a 5K tomorrow with a friend. What do I do? Those are kinds of things you can't solve on Strava today, but I know that the answer exists inside our community. And I'd love for Strava to be the place where you can ask those kinds of questions about living a healthier and more active life. I hope we can do that really soon. So let's see, when we go forward and think about what it means to have ideas that turn into companies, I think that's also another aspect of what I look back at in my years of starting things and what the experience has been. It's been, the reward comes in building something that's monetarily successful, but the biggest reward comes from connecting the group of people who come to work on the idea to the solution that they create and what that does for the world. Like that's the incredibly rewarding part, is unlocking the potential of that group of people and seeing that their work actually means something to people that use the product or use the service. So as I think back and look back at the years, it's been now 14 years since we started Strava, and I look ahead to the future. That's, I think, what we want to continue to go back to, is building that thing that people love every day, that they wake up every day wanting to use, and then that's the reward, is that we see that just is incredibly satisfying, that they find joy and value in that. So I'm going to end here with those remarks, and we do have some time for questions if people want anything specific about starting companies, Strava in general, feature requests, happy to take them. If you have any concerns or questions about anything that you've heard, glad to answer it.
All right, if you guys have any questions, feel free to go to Vipul there.
I'll bring the mic to you.
He'll bring the mic to you. Or you can raise your hands.
Just raise your hand.
Okay, I see a blue shirt there.
Hi, I was just wondering what was like the largest, most difficult challenge you encountered when starting your app, and like first like getting to that MVP stage?
In the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, well, I suppose that the biggest thing was trying to come up with something novel. Like, there were a lot of different ways to track a workout. It's like, that was a well-solved problem of just collecting the GPS points and representing it on a map and showing some statistics. But to unlock the idea that someone else would care about it, you had to make it relevant. We created something called Strava Segments, which was the brainchild of Davey Kitchell, who's someone who I met along the journey of starting Strava, and he was trying to solve a simple, he thought it might be a problem for himself, which is, how do I compare the time I'm going up the climb from the street to, up my driveway to my house, which is in Vermont, a very kind of hilly area, compare the time today to the time yesterday when I'm riding my bike. He just wanted to do that comparison, and he thought maybe he could figure out a way to compare that using GPS points. Pretty straightforward when you know what segment you're riding. But then as you start just saying, all this data is coming in, how do you match one person's rides against another person's rides based on GPS points? And back in 2008 or so, a lot of the toolkits that that we have today were just not in existence. So we had to create the technology to be able to do that. That's like an example of computationally, but doing it at scale. Those are usually the hardest things that we've had to come across, is geolocation-based data computationally at scale for data from anywhere. If I think back to like what's hard about that is the computation stuff. It's the actually making the technology work. But the other part that's hard is you're not sure, you're going to invest all this time and effort into getting the solution, but you actually aren't 100% sure that it's the answer to somebody's problem, that it's actually going to matter to whatever you're trying to create. So a lot of what I think is really important about how you start anything that turns into a company or a research project is starting with the right question, as opposed to, I have this thing that is the solution and I'm going to see if it works. Start with the right question. And usually, like, the way to know if it's the right question is to test. You got to test and learn. And in our case, we developed a rudimentary prototype of this segment matching algorithm, and we didn't do it at scale. That was the hard problem. But first, we put it out in the hands of 20 people in the world and said, try using this thing. We could do it for 20. And it came, like, it basically, they told us, they confirmed to us that this was the answer to this was the right thing to be working on, because it changed the way that they thought about riding their bike. It was only cycling back then. They liked it more. They enjoyed it. They were doing it more. And that's exactly the kind of thing we were looking for, is to differentiate ourselves from other ways to just track a workout.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was really nice hearing from your presentation. The question I wanted to ask was, if you could go back 20 years and give yourself some advice, what would you tell yourself?
It's a great question. Thank you for asking it. Let's see. I think the last 20 years, if I go back to, so I'm 56, I was 36 20 years ago. Balance in life is not a flat line. Balance is the peaks and the valleys, and they repeat. So when you are looking for balance, your goal is not to find that it's all equals out. Your goal is to compensate the peaks and the valleys in a way that feels right to you. So what I mean by that is, I think the best advice I could have given myself is make sure you're really intellectually and emotionally honest about your peaks and valleys. The story, I'll share a few stories maybe, is that when I was 36, I have 4 kids. They were very young back then. The oldest is now 29, the youngest is 24. And so the peaks and valleys on my life also were like, how much was I around in their lives when they were really young? And that's like an example of, you don't get that back. And it's not that they lost out. I have learned since, it's that I lost out. I missed out on aspects of their childhood that I can't get back, and that's my loss. And I always was thinking, am I doing enough for them? But I was not recognizing, was I doing enough for myself in a way that I would now be able to look back at the peaks and valleys and see that I have balanced that out. And well, so that would be probably the biggest thing I can say now back to my 36-year-old self, because I was very hell-bent on trying to do whatever I was doing to the max, and that probably wasn't the right approach to life.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Thank you so
Michael.
much, Michael.